Welcome to the sixth class about reinforcement learning. This class is dedicated to a few concepts that are important when we will move towards deep reinforcement learning. We will examine Monte Carlo methods and the relationship with temporal difference learning. We will examine bias variance and the importance of n-step return methods. And finally, we will have a look at model-based reinforcement learning. But before that, let's have a look at the overestimation bias. So what's the overestimation bias? That's the fact that when you are estimating the Q table for a particular MDP, due to initialization, you may have too high values. So let's first take the example of that particular video. So let's have a look at overestimation bias. As you can see with this particular maze, we have initialized a Q table with here a Q value that is much higher than it should be. Okay, we set 2, whereas the maximum reward is 1 here, so the value should not be 2. And you can see an agent which is performing Q-learning. So far it has not found this particularly high value, so everything is fine. But you can see that each time it will find this value, it will propagate the value to the neighborhood cells in the maze. So this overestimated value will propagate around due to the max operator in Q-learning. And then what you can see here is that once it has found the value again, it will tend to exploit this value, so it will go back to the cell which has a high value until the value gets lower than the values around. But you can see that meanwhile, due to the exploration process, the values will still propagate and the agent will spend a lot of time trying to exploit this value instead of going to the final value as it should. So this overestimation bias is a real problem because it will propagate wrong values in the Q table of the agent. As you have seen in the video, in Q-learning, due to the max operator, if some Q values are overestimated, this overestimation will propagate to the values around. Okay? But this is not the fact of underestimation. If you have a low value here, well, the other actions will be better and the agent won't try these actions, so the values won't propagate around in the general case. So the point with Q-learning is that you get this overestimation bias. The point also is that you cannot prevent the existence of the overestimation bias because you need to initialize your Q table and you don't know what are the right initial values. So you may at some point try an initialization where the value is too high. So Ado van Hasselt in this paper found a solution which consists in using two Q tables, one for value estimation and one for value propagation. This is called double Q-learning, and this is important because this will also be used in the continuous case with an algorithm called double DQN that uses the same ID in the continuous state case. Now let's have a look at the relationship between temporal difference methods and Monte Carlo methods. Monte Carlo methods consist in starting from a particular state and playing trajectories from that state, let's say random trajectories where you try various actions, and you do so until you reach the end of some experiment and you propagate the values that you got along the path back. So you can say that, for instance, trying these actions resulted in a very high positive value, whereas performing these actions resulted in a very high negative value. So this value will be the average over the different trajectories. Monte Carlo methods are much used in games such as Go or chess, etc., because you can evaluate a position in that game just by playing the game randomly until you reach the end of the game, and then you know whether it was a win or a loss, so you can propagate the value backwards. Okay. And in fact, these Monte Carlo methods use the same kind of average estimation methods that we have seen when presenting model-free reinforcement learning. That was the fourth class with this update equation. But here the particular case is that you perform the same equation, but with the rewards that you get all along the trajectory. Okay. So that's very similar, but the difference is that here you propagate over the whole trajectory from the current state to the end of the episode. So the difference between temporal difference method and Monte Carlo methods is as follows. In fact, temporal difference methods combine the properties of dynamic programming methods and Monte Carlo methods. Indeed, in Monte Carlo methods, the transition function and the reward function are unknown. You are just playing a trajectory to see where you go. But the value update is global over full trajectories. Whereas in dynamic programming, the transition and reward function are known, and you perform local updates. In temporal difference method, if you think of it, as in dynamic programming, the values are updated locally, given an estimate of the previous value, but the transition and reward function are unknown. So in a way, temporal difference methods have more interesting properties than Monte Carlo methods from one side and dynamic programming for the other side. The point is that Monte Carlo methods can be reformulated incrementally or locally using the temporal difference update in a particular way. I won't go into that for that particular class. Now let's look at a second concept, and we will reuse Monte Carlo methods later on. You will see why I'm introducing these methods. The second concept is the bias variance compromise. Here you have a very generic drawing that shows you that if you want to perform some estimation of a stochastic process, here you have the model complexity, and the more complicated is your model, the more variance you may have by estimating some value with your model, but the less bias. Okay, so let's first define bias. Bias is the fact to get an average over many stochastic values, which is a little wrong. Okay, your estimate of the average is wrong, whereas variance is the fact that you get different estimates at different times. So the point is that a bigger model or a more complex model may have more variance and less bias. So there is a bias variance compromise, and sometimes you want to find the optimal model complexity so as to get as few bias and variance as possible. Okay. In the case of reinforcement learning, trajectories will be a kind of model of the value. Okay, and trajectories will be a large model and a Q-table will be a smaller model. So how does it go to speak about this bias variance compromise in the case of reinforcement learning? Here is the full story. In fact, if you want to estimate the value of S0 and you use Monte Carlo methods, you have a lot of variance because you are performing many random trajectories and your environment may be stochastic. So the return you get is very different each time. So you get a high variance about this return. By contrast, if you use a one-step temporal difference method, well, you just perform one step, so you don't have a lot of variance because there is a very small source of stochasticity in that process. But there is bias because you are using the previous value of your value function so as to estimate your new value. So if this estimate is wrong, due to the bias propagation, this estimate will be wrong too. And in fact, if you think of it, what is called n-step return is a good compromise, can be a good compromise between Monte Carlo methods and one-step temporal differences, because you have more variance than in the one-step case, but you have less bias than in the one-step case, and you have less variance than in Monte Carlo and more bias. Okay, so it offers you a compromise between the two. So how can you perform the n-step return in practice? Well, the point is to save, okay, rather the question is how can you combine n-step return and using a replay buffer? The idea is to store samples in your replay buffer, and in fact these samples corresponds to n consecutive steps in the environment. So in fact, to one sample in the replay buffer will correspond, for instance, here to 4 consecutive states, 3 actions because you need the next state after the last action, and the reward that you get at the first step, and so on and so on. Okay. And how does n-step return work in practice? Let's see a video to show you that it's a good idea to do so. Okay, so as you have seen, n-step Q-learning is much more efficient than Q-learning itself because the values are propagated faster along the Q-table. Now let's move to model-based reinforcement learning. Before moving into that, we need a final intermediate step which corresponds to eligibility traces. What are eligibility traces? In fact, this is a very simple idea. The idea is that if you look how Q-learning works, you will propagate the value of the reward just at the previous step, but everything you did before is just forgotten. So it might be a good idea to record your trajectory while you are moving your agent, and once you find the source of reward, you will propagate values backwards along this trajectory so that you will update the values of all the states that you have visited along that particular trajectory. This would be a very simple and naive idea. The point is that, as I already told you, mathematicians love the infinite horizon case, and you cannot record an infinite horizon trajectory. So mathematicians have found a better way to implement the same process using less memory, because you don't need to record infinite horizon trajectories, but using a parameter lambda that will allow you to propagate the values along states. So what's this lambda? In fact, you get an indicator of how recently you went to each step, and each time you get a reward, you will update the value of all the states depending on that particular indicator. So if the state has been visited very recently, you will update the value a lot, and if the state has been visited a long time ago, you will update it very few. And if you do so, in fact, you are performing the same as using your memory of trajectories, but without needing to record the trajectories themselves. So that's much more efficient to just update these indicators depending on how much time ago you visited each state. So that's eligibility traces. And I should mention that if your eligibility factor lambda is 0, then the indicator of how recently you visited the state will be 0 immediately. So you just perform one update and you go back to TD of 0, SARSA, or Q-learning, the standard algorithm. And if you set lambda to be 1, then you get Monte Carlo exactly. Okay. Now let's move to model-based reinforcement learning. That's a little different idea. That's in fact the most obvious idea when you want to perform reinforcement learning coming from dynamic programming. The idea consists in learning a model of the transition function and learning a model of the reward function, or a model of the payoff, and then propagating the rewards through the model so as to compute the Q values. Okay? So if you have learned a perfectly accurate model, then you are in the case of dynamic programming and you will be able to find the correct trajectory. This can be done in a series of different ways. You can draw random transition in a model, learn the model, and then apply temporal difference backups. Or you can apply policy iteration, Q-learning, actor critique methods. So this gave rise to a family of architectures which are called DYNA architectures that were invented by Richard Sutton in the early 90s. Okay. And you can accelerate the process by propagating the values with some efficient algorithm which is called Pareto sweeping. The idea is that when some value changes somewhere, you should update preferentially the values that are close to that particular state, either in the future or in the past. Now let's have a look at how reinforcement learning in the model-based case works in practice. So first, let's have a look at the case where the model of the environment that was learned is quite good. So now let's have a look at model-based reinforcement learning. The agent is performing the same random walk as usual, but this time it's learning that when it performs that action in that particular cell, it will move there, and so on for all the cells that it is visiting. So you can see that as soon as it finds the reward, the corresponding values are propagated through the model, and you can see that immediately the agent is able to find the correct policy and to stabilize the value function correctly. As you can see, model-based reinforcement learning is very efficient in that particular case. But it may happen that the model was poorly learned. This is the case where you learn a bad model that we will now look at. So let's have a look again at model-based reinforcement learning, but in a case where the agent finds the reward very quickly. In that case, the agent had not enough time to learn a correct model of the environment. So as you can see, the values are propagated wrongly. So you can see that the agent is following high values, but these values propagate in a very weird way because the model itself is wrong. And as you can see along this video, these values in that particular case tend to oscillate, and finally they will stabilize to something satisfactory after the agent finds the reward again. But this is more or less by chance. So for model-based reinforcement learning to work, you need the agent to learn an accurate model of the environment, which is not the case if the agent does not have enough time to explore. Okay, so what you can retain is that model-based reinforcement learning can be much more efficient than model-free reinforcement learning, provided that you are able to learn an efficient model. A point with these techniques is that the model of transition can be rather complicated to learn, and in particular, if you have a very large MDP, this model is very large, so you need a lot of memory. So a better idea would consist in using compact models with some generalization in the state space or even in the action space. So this has gave rise to learning classifier systems for a long while ago, and more recently in 2006 we proposed to perform model-based reinforcement learning using factored MDPs, which was something more compact than using a full model without generalization. And that's it for that particular video. Thank you for listening.